When I climbed over the rusty iron fence and landed with a soft thud, my heart pounded so fast it felt like it would leap out of my chest. I was in 6th grade at the time. The abandoned swimming pool was shrouded in darkness, with only faint moonlight filtering through the broken skylights, casting eerie reflections on the damp floor. "Ryan, are you sure about this?" Lucas whispered behind me, his voice laced with unease. His hands gripped the fence tightly, hesitating to follow. "We made a deal. Stay inside for 10 minutes, prove there's nothing here, and I win," I whispered back, a mix of excitement and smugness in my tone. "You guys said this place was haunted, right? Well, I'm proving you wrong." Emily stood beside Lucas, her face pale. She had always been timid, yet she still came tonight. Twisting a strand of her golden ponytail around her finger, she anxiously said, "Ryan, this place is really creepy. We should just go back." "Don't be silly." I waved her off and stepped forward, my footsteps leaving wet imprints on the water-stained floor. This place had been abandoned for years. Faded safety signs hung on the walls, rust covered the iron lockers, and the air was thick with the stench of mildew. We used to swim here as kids, but then we heard that a boy had disappeared in the pool, and the facility was permanently shut down. I made my way down the corridor and reached the poolside. Under the dim light, the water shimmered faintly. It looked deeper than I remembered, its inky depths like a bottomless pit devouring all light. I swallowed hard and glanced at the other two. "Are you guys just going to stand there, or are you coming in?" Lucas hesitated, before finally climbing over the fence. Emily reluctantly followed. I stood at the pool's edge, took off my shoes, and dipped my foot into the water. A jolt of cold shot up my spine. I tested the tiled floor beneath, feeling nothing unusual. "There's nothing here," I scarfed, turning back to them. "I just need to swim for a few minutes, and then I win." "Ryan, are you sure?" Emily's voice trembled, as her eyes fixated on the water like she saw something that shouldn't be there. "What's there to be scared of?" I shrugged and, without another thought, leapt into the pool. The moment the water engulfed me, I felt an odd pressure pressing in from all sides. It was deeper than I expected, the darkness beneath me thick like a heavy curtain, swallowing all traces of light. I surfaced, exhaled, and looked up at Lucas and Emily. They were still on the edge, their expressions even worse than before. "What's wrong with you guys?" I chuckled, playfully splashing the water. Lucas opened his mouth, but said nothing. Emily, however, was trembling, her eyes locked onto the depths. Her lips quivered as she whispered, "Ryan, get out, now." There was a fear in her voice that sent a chill down my spine. I turned and looked beneath me. That's when I saw it. At the bottom of the pool, a writhing mass of shadows stirred. From the darkness, long, sinuous tendrils began to emerge, unfurling like something crawling up from the depths of hell. They were unnaturally thin, covered in grotesque suction cups, moving slowly deliberate, as if sensing my presence and inching toward me. My throat went dry, my blood turned to ice. This was impossible. This was just a swimming pool. But those tendrils, they were real. Slithering, twisting, reaching. "Ryan, get out." Lucas's scream snapped me from my trance. My body reacted before my mind could process it. I kicked hard, propelling myself toward the edge. The water felt heavier. Something was moving beneath me. A terrible force was pulling at my legs. I thrashed desperately, feeling something cold and slick coil around my ankle, like a wet serpent trying to drag me down. I fought, clawed at the water, reaching for the edge. My fingers grazed the tiles. Lucas lunged forward and grabbed my arm. "Pull me up," I screamed as the force beneath me grew stronger. Lucas yanked with all his strength, and I tumbled onto the floor, water splashing everywhere. Gasping, trembling, my legs were numb with fear. Emily crouched beside me, her wide eyes still locked on the pool. We all held our breath, watching. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, slowly, those nightmarish tendrils receded, slithering back into the abyss, vanishing into the unseen depths. The water was still again. As if nothing had ever happened, but we knew. We knew it was real. My whole body was shaking. Lucas and Emily were just as pale, speechless with horror. "Go, we have to go." Emily finally choked out, grabbing my wrist. We didn't hesitate. Scrambling to our feet, we bolted toward the exit. The pool remained silent behind us, but we could feel it. Something was still there, lurking, watching. As we burst through the doors, gasping for breath, we swore we would never come back here again. I still remember when I was about 10 years old, living in a remote town surrounded by dense forests. During the day, the elders of the town would always warn us in trembling voices not to go near the edge of the forest. That was where the Hunter King resided, an entity that did not belong to this world. He had no name, only a bird beak-shaped mask. He had no eyes, yet he could see all the lost souls in the darkness. No one knew where he came from, or why he hunted, only that those who were taken by him never returned. By the time the sun had set, my younger brother Cain and I had already lost our way deep in the forest. At first, we had only wanted to play and run around the fields outside the village, but before we realized it, the familiar meadows had disappeared. In their place stood rows of tall, suffocating trees. The sky had darkened, and the wind carried low, murmuring whispers, as if unseen figures were conversing in the shadows. Everything around us felt unfamiliar. The trees loomed unnaturally tall, their branches intertwining to form an impenetrable canopy of darkness. The ground was covered with decaying leaves and moss, soft and damp underfoot, as if we were treading on something rotten. I held Cain's hand tightly, desperately searching for the way back to the village, but no matter which direction we took, we couldn't find our way out. Then, as night fell completely, a strange flute melody drifted from the distance. It was a long, eerie tune, as if carried from an ancient era, lingering in the night air and intertwining with the wind. The melody rose and fell, sometimes soothing, sometimes somber like a whispered incantation that clung to our ears, refusing to fade. My body stiffened as the warnings of the village elders echoed in my mind. The Hunter King had come. The air in the forest grew even colder. The wind had ceased, and the chirping of insects had abruptly fallen silent. A suffocating stillness swallowed the surroundings, as though every living thing had held its breath. And then, I heard footsteps approaching from the depths of the woods. But they weren't ordinary footsteps. They were unnervingly soft, like something tall and slender gliding through the forest. Each step followed an eerie rhythm, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, yet always drawing closer. A gaunt shadow emerged from the darkness. His form was disturbingly tall, his limbs impossibly long and thin, his spine slightly hunched, like that of an ancient predator closing in on its prey. He wore a skeletal bird beak mask, with hollow, pitch-black sockets, where his eyes should have been dark voids that seemed to devour all light. Around his neck hung two shriveled human skulls, swaying gently with each step, producing a faint clattering sound, like a cursed ornament. But the most terrifying thing was the basket on his back. It was woven from withered vines and animal hides, filled with twisted, contorted shadows. They weren't mere objects, they were people. Tattered clothing, shriveled limbs, and bones still stained with traces of blood lay haphazardly within the basket, like discarded, broken toys. The Hunter King played his flute, the melody slithering through the night like a whispered spell. I held my breath. The night had fully descended, and the forest was swallowed by a suffocating darkness, the air thick with damp, icy stillness. I curled up behind a dead tree, clutching my knees tightly. I shouldn't be here, I thought, but there was no turning back now. I tried to suppress my pounding heart, willing myself to blend into the shadows. But Cain's palm was slick with cold sweat, his breathing had turned shallow, and his body trembled uncontrollably. Then, his foot slipped ever so slightly. A twig snapped beneath him. Crack. The sound echoed through the deathly silent forest, sharp and unforgiving. The flute music halted. The Hunter King tilted his head slightly, his hollow eye sockets locking onto our hiding place. He had no eyes, yet I could feel his gaze piercing straight into my soul. His body swayed subtly, as if confirming our location. Then he lifted his unnaturally long fingers, clawed like those of a bird of prey, and reached toward us. Terror consumed me. I yanked Cain up and bolted deeper into the forest. Our footsteps were frantic and uneven, branches tearing at our skin, leaving stinging cuts. The darkness twisted around us, shifting into monstrous shapes, as if the entire forest were closing in. And behind us, the footsteps pursued relentlessly. They weren't running, they were sliding. An unnatural glide through the trees, swift and inescapable. Suddenly, an icy stream appeared before us, its surface shimmering under the pale moonlight. There was no time to hesitate. I dragged Cain into the water. The bone-chilling cold swallowed us instantly. I covered Cain's mouth, pressing him beneath the surface, leaving only the faintest trace of breath. Through the rippling water, I saw the Hunter King standing at the stream's edge. He lowered his head, the black voids where his eyes should be staring directly into the water at us. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. He stood motionless, listening. It was as if he was deciding whether we were still alive. The silence stretched unbearably. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he slowly turned away, retreating with his unnatural gait into the depths of the forest. The flute melody resumed, long, chilling, and mocking, as if ridiculing our escape, or perhaps warning us that the hunt was far from over. We remained submerged for what felt like hours, waiting until we were absolutely sure he had gone. Finally, we surfaced, gasping for breath. Cain was trembling uncontrollably, my own limbs numb from the cold. Did we survive? Cain's voice quivered. The moonlight illuminated our drenched, shivering forms. In the distance, the forest remained eerily silent, as if nothing had ever happened. I've always been an introverted person, not good at socializing, always keeping to myself. Maybe that's why I became the outcast of the class, the easy target for some people to vent their frustrations on. They constantly messed with me, hiding my textbooks, pouring water on my chair, sometimes even shoving me into walls like it was some kind of cruel game. I never said anything, just got used to enduring their mockery and insults, and they never seemed to consider how deeply their words and actions hurt me. No matter how angry I was, I could never fight back, because I knew fighting back would only make things worse. That day, the sky was grey and overcast. They called me over to the back of the school, near an old abandoned well. They said they wanted to play a fun game. I knew nothing good would come of it, but before I could even hesitate, they had already surrounded me. I tried to turn and leave, but one of them suddenly shoved me hard. I stumbled backward, my foot slipping, my body tilting violently. The next second, I plunged into darkness. The air inside the well was cold and damp. My body slammed against the stone walls as I fell, my arms scraping against the rough surface, leaving long, stinging wounds. The pain was so intense I nearly blacked out. Finally, I crashed heavily onto the bottom of the well, curling up on the wet ground. All I could hear was my own ragged breathing and the frantic pounding of my heart. "Help me!" I called out, my voice trembling, hoping they were still up there, hoping this was just a twisted joke to scare me. But the only response was muffled laughter from above. "You can just stay down there. Serves you right for being so annoying," one of them sneered. Then, I heard their footsteps fading away, and everything went silent. They were gone. They had really left me here. A chill ran through my entire body, as my hands groped around the well's muddy floor, slick, wet, covered in rotting leaves. A sharp pain throbbed in my ankle, probably twisted from the fall. My elbow was still bleeding, the metallic scent of blood mixing with the damp air. I couldn't just sit here and wait to die. I had to get out. I looked up at the wells opening a distant patch of light, so far away it felt like another world. Taking a deep breath, I reached out to touch the stone wall. It was cold, uneven, covered in patches of moss. A glimmer of hope flickered inside me. Maybe I could climb out. Gritting my teeth, I carefully got to my feet, ignoring the sharp pain in my ankle. I grabbed onto the cracks in the stone and started pushing myself upward. I knew it was dangerous, but I had no other choice. The wall was slippery, my palms struggling to get a firm grip. My feet desperately searched for a foothold, and little by little I inched upward. I had climbed about a third of the way when my hands suddenly slipped. In an instant, I lost my balance and plummeted back down, crashing onto the hard ground. Pain shot through my body. I gasped, my knees throbbing, my palms scraped raw and bleeding, but I refused to give up. Clenching my jaw, I forced myself up and tried again. Again and again, I pushed myself, my body straining with every movement. Every inch I climbed filled me with a fragile sense of hope. But it never lasted long. I kept slipping, my strength failing me, sending me crashing back down each time. The more I fell, the deeper the despair settled in. My hands trembled, my vision blurred with tears, yet I forced myself to stand up again and again. Every time I got close to the top, I would lose my grip, my foot would give out, or exhaustion would take over, dragging me back down into the darkness. The light at the top of the well started to fade. The sky was darkening. I screamed until my throat was raw, but my voice was swallowed by the cold, damp air. My entire body was shaking. Hunger gnawed at my stomach. My limbs had gone weak from overuse. Was I going to die here? The darkness twisted my thoughts. Strange whispers filled my ears, soft murmurs, eerie laughter. Things I couldn't understand. My mind started playing tricks on me. Had someone been trapped here before me? Was I really alone in this well? I shut my eyes tightly, too terrified to look around, afraid of what I might see lurking in the shadows. I curled up at the bottom of the well, hugging myself, holding back my tears, trying not to make a sound. Then suddenly I heard voices, familiar voices, the voices of the classmates who had pushed me down. I couldn't see their faces, but I could hear their panic, their frantic shouting. Someone said my name. Someone mentioned their parents. My eyes snapped open. Daylight had returned. Summoning the last of my strength, I lifted my head and screamed, "I'm here. I'm at the bottom of the well." For a moment, there was silence. Then a gasp, followed by the sound of rushing footsteps. My heart sank. Were they running? Were they going to pretend they didn't know, afraid of getting into trouble? "Please, I'm begging you, pull me up, please." I screamed hysterically, tears spilling down my face. Fear and rage surged inside me. Why hadn't I fought back before? What if they just left me here, pretending I never existed? But then I heard more footsteps. Adults. "Kid, are you okay?" Before long, a rescuer descended into the well, strong hands wrapping around me. I clung to him, my entire body trembling, terrified of falling again. Slowly, the rope pulled us upward, lifting me out of the darkness. My fingers clenched tightly, feeling the light grow closer, the air becoming fresher, the voices around me becoming real. When I finally reached the top, I collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath. My body was freezing, stiff, aching. Surrounding me were teachers, parents and the classmates who had thrown me down the well. Their faces were filled with shock, guilt, but not one of them dared to meet my eyes. Later, they were punished for what they did. But for me, the real pain had already carved itself deep into my memory. Every second I spent struggling in that well became a shadow that would never leave me. Today, I finally found the courage to tell my story. Not for revenge, not for pity, but to let others who have suffered bullying know you are not alone. You should never have to live in fear. Stand up, speak out, because no one has the right to hurt you.